Today, we become legends.
Whether you're weak against hunters and need some tips to up your game, or you play hunters yourself and want to know a little bit more about the class, this video is for you. Today we cover one tip against every hunter in Smite. This is the final video in the series, so if you want to check out the other class videos for assassins, warriors, mages and guardians, they're out already on the channel for you to watch after this one. Now that this series is wrapping up, I was considering launching a one tip to master your god style of series in a similar format, but where the tips are for playing as the god, not to counter them. If that sounds interesting, do let me know in the comments, as I'll be using that for a gauge for if the new series will be popular. Subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss that potential series, as well as all my other content coming to the channel in season 9, but without further ado, let's jump in with our first hunter tip. But first, let's talk about the mobile RPG with over 600 champions coming from dozens of unique factions. That's right, it's Raid. And recently, the team over at Raid have released their most unique boss EX. Assemble your team to take down the mighty Hydra, a boss that comes with 5 different heads just like the legends, each of which has its own unique boss mechanic, making the fight very difficult but very rewarding with amazing loot for taking down the Hydra. But if PvE boss fights aren't your thing, give Raid's PvP arenas a try. Building a synergistic team that can face up to other players' rosters and win is one of the best parts of Raid. With so many different champions to choose from and ways to build each one, no two teams are ever the same in PvP, and it makes for a really interesting experience. And who better to put on your PvP team than the super limited edition champion, esports legend Simple is now in Raid. You can get him for free as long as you log in for 7 days between now and the end of the event on January 28th, so be quick. Simple looks like a really strong champion to have on your roster. So if you want to get a head start in Raid, click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen with your mobile to get a free mystery champion, 200,000 silver, XP boosts and more. Find these rewards in your inbox for the next 30 days only if you sign up at the link below, but other than that, I'll catch you guys in the Raid. Amuzan. So AMC's biggest weakness is dives. He has no CC immunity on his ultimate, no traditional mobility, just a small speed boost on his hives, and no get off me type CCs that he can use as self peel like a stun or anything like that. All he has are slows and cripples, not really going to stop a jungle or solo diving him particularly. This playstyle of just being aggressive on him to not allow him to be aggressive where he's at his best is pretty good against quite a few squishy gods, but AMC is a prime example of it. You also get the benefit of potentially chasing him out of his hive range, which massively reduces his damage output by losing that 50% attack speed buff. Anhur. Don't box him early. Anhur's passive applies a flat protection debuff to enemies hit by his spears of 20, meaning he effectively has 20 free penetration in the early game. This is flat reduction and not percent reduction, so this becomes less relevant later in the game, but in the laning phase, Anhur will just hit you harder than you will hit him if you try to box him due to this passive. 20 penetration at level 1 is no joke, and it's a large part of the reason Anhur's damage is so high early on. Apollo. Apollo's Serenade is an extremely fast mez and one of the best panic buttons in the game. If you have a channeled ability of any kind like Anubis' one, or even just an ability with a long startup, think Kumba's Root as an extreme example, try to force Apollo's mez before using these abilities. It's so quick that he can easily react to you using a certain ability and just cancel it, gaining the upper hand. Forcing this out of him if possible first will lead to a better shot of taking down Apollo. Artemis. So this is a pretty simple one. Artemis' Caledonian Boar or Tusky will always target the nearest enemy god to him, aside from the initial cast where it can be somewhat guided using the cone. So once Tusky is out, he's going for the nearest enemy god to him. You can use this to your advantage and be ready on your beads, a CC immune ultimate, a jump away, etc. before the boar actually hits you, since you'll know you'll be next if you're the closest to Tusky. And likewise, if you're the furthest from Tusky and you have other teammates much closer to him, you know you have a bit of time to work with before he gets to you and stuns you. CHERNO. Bramble Blast is CERN's main wave clear ability and it's blockable. It will explode on contact with any enemy, and so if you stand in front of your own minion wave and eat the projectile, you can most likely block his wave clear in the early game. This tip is of course better used by the support, but can be applied in ADC as well, and even other roles to a certain extent. You of course take extra damage for doing this, but gain the pressure from your faster wave clear in the early game, which can make this strategy worth it. CHARYBDIS. So this one is a bit similar to the Apollo tip. CHARYBDIS has one of the best movement abilities in the entire game, with instant immunity for 3 seconds plus a ton of other benefits. This ability will always come out when you're diving her. You've just got to expect that and try and play around it by forcing her 3 out before full committing to her, saving your own movement ability to chase her after she uses hers, or simply forcing it and backing up before re-engaging. Whirlpool form is a really strong instant immunity and it will ruin your day if you aren't careful. CHERNO. CHERNO can actually get a really solid burst damage with his dash by dashing through an enemy into a wall, then immediately exiting the wall for more damage. This is of course a risky strategy since it uses up your movement ability and immunity, but if you need that little bit of extra damage to finish off a kill, this can do a surprisingly high amount on a double hit. CHIRON. CHIRON lacks the traditional quick dash or jump ability and instead has a charge where he can fire basic attacks. This is really nice for chasing people down, but for running away it's a bit exploitable. The ability moves fairly slow in comparison to most movement abilities and can be pretty easily interrupted mid-cast, leaving CHIRON vulnerable. The dash is immune to knockups but nothing else, so any quick silence, stun or taunt etc. will all pull him out of the dash before he gets very far and can hopefully lead to a kill. And of course, the quicker you react to him using the dash and hit it with a CC, the less far it'll go. Cupid. Okay, so if Cupid hits you with a heart bomb, what you need to do is run to the nearest ally as fast as possible and give them a hug. CC immune ults are a great way to deal with Cupid's ult without wasting your beads. Since Cupid's ult doesn't hard CC you immediately, you can easily pop your own CC immune ult to immune the slow and cripple and get out of the area before it explodes. This allows you to save beads for a more critical use, such as when you've been hit by a stun or something and can't just ult to cleanse it. You'll need beads for that. DANZA Burrow. So this is a nice little trick that's been used for years and years to deal with Loki and other stealth gods, but it works even better on DANZA. So after Tanuki Trickery, where he turns into a leaf, just throw any AoE abilities you have in his general direction the last time you saw him. If DANZA takes any damage at all in leaf form, he's immediately revealed, so even just a clip from one of your AoE abilities will reveal him, at which point he's pretty vulnerable with his movement ability down. Again, this strategy can be used to track any stealth god in reality, and the larger the area of effect, the easier it is to tag someone with damage and reveal them. Mystical Male is also hilariously good at this kind of thing. HACHI. When Hachi is using his 3 aggressively for the stun, a nice bit of tech that I like to use is that I'll walk forward towards him as he dashes. This will often cause him to overshoot the second AoE swing and the stun that comes with it. Your walking forward combined with his dashing towards you means you're out of range for the small circle slash afterwards, which of course is required to get the stun, and you can then turn on him afterwards or do whatever you need to do in the moment. Heimdallr. So Heim has by far potentially the longest cooldown ability in the whole game, plus it's his movement. Of course, the cooldown on Heim 3 isn't always 210 seconds, in fact it almost never is, but very often I do see Heim players making risky TP plays that puts the ability on cooldown for a minute or more, as a result, which gives you tons of time to re-engage on him with that knowledge that his crystals are down and he has no movement. Ganking a Heim with crystals is extremely difficult, but ganking one without crystals is a piece of cake. This ability is really strong, but also has massive weaknesses like the long cooldown that you need to exploit to fight Heim well. Hu Yi. You got to learn the dive bomb mind games if you're going to play against Hu Yi. Since he hovers in the air and can decide which direction to jump, how far, and even can choose not to jump at all, the two-part nature of this ability makes it more of a mind game than just following his dash with your dash. It's like waiting on a Wukong to jump from the cloud in his ult, but on a smaller scale. This applies for any god that goes into the air with abilities, but you can try unlocking your camera settings in-game. This allows you to look almost directly upwards instead of being angle locked, and is great for stuff like Thanatos and Thorals where you have to look far into the sky to see what they're going to do. But this also works really well against Hu Yi's jump to get a read on where he's going to go and if he's going to drop down instead of jumping or go aggressive, things like that. Izanami. This one might be a bit obvious, but expect to lose the clear in duo against Izanami. I feel like a lot of people's issues playing into her is that they get snowballed on in lane because they try and fight her when she's already cleared the entire wave with just basics and has hers pushing. Most hunters catch up in wave clear around the time they get their main wave clear ability to rank 4 or 5 or so, but until then you've got to expect to get out cleared and hence probably out traded in the early game by Izanami. It's just a fact of life. Jingwei. Poke is less valuable and riskier plays to go for the kill are more valuable against Jing, since any poke she takes can just be healed off in the fountain, often without missing a wave, and then she can fly straight back using her passive. Medusa. Try to avoid standing to the back of your own wave versus Medusa. The target of Acid Spray reaches pretty far back in a cone and even out to the sides near your archers. Try to either stand towards your melees or way off to the side out of range of Acid Spray's cone after she hits your melee minions with it. I see tons of people just taking free poke from this ability wave after wave when it's fairly easy to avoid and very predictable. It's consistent in where it will hit if you just hit it on your melee minions, so it's pretty easy to handle and not stand in the specific area covered by Acid Spray's cone. Neith. So despite being sped up a fair bit, Neith's backflip is still the most predictable and one of the slower leaps in the game. Since it can only be used in a straight line backwards at a set distance, you can easily know exactly where Neith is going to land with a bit of practice, and can prime an ability to hit her either right as she lands or chase her down with your own movement ability and get on her right as the backflip completes. RAMA. If you're ever going to dive Rama, be that in lane or in a team fight, be ready to wait the extra 5 seconds to land a kill. Rama's ult not only does big damage, but also gives CC immunity and self-banishes for 5 seconds, which often gives Rama enough time to reset some cooldowns or wait for backup from his team. You gotta be ready for this if you're gonna try and dive a Rama. Skadi. So Skadi, in all honesty, is a pretty glass cannon all-in character. She either goes all-in or has someone else go all-in on her. So my tip against Skadi is to treat her like you treat a healer mage, for example. Just go all-in on her or don't go in at all. Her lack of actual mobility and no CC immunity on her ult makes her pretty vulnerable to this type of dive, and her only real self-peel is the ice and I guess a short route on her ultimate. Long story short, she's easy to kill but also easily kills you. You want to be on the good end of that trade. ULLR. The axe is everything. I basically view ULLR as just the axe, they're one and the same. Yes, he can do great damage without the axe, mostly in the late game, but a majority of ULLR's threat level comes from the fact that he can hit one line skill shot and delete most of your health bar in a true combo from it. Axe is linear and stops at the first target, making walls, teammates and minions great ways to block an axe or prevent the ULLR from even trying to axe you in the first place. In lane, try to stand with your minions between you and the ULLR, and in teamfights, try to stick close to your support and use them to body block since they can take an axe and not die to it. Likewise, getting around curved corners and using the terrain to your advantage can make it hard to hit such a linear ability that doesn't go through walls or enemies. Xbalanque. Please stop getting poked by bowlers in lane. This is a very similar point to Medusa's in that these bowlers branch off from an initial hit, meaning they're always predictable. If you know where the first target is, you can easily know where the bowlers will go afterwards. They do the same thing on hit always, they're very consistent, and your minions will usually be in the same formation and position in the lane each time. They may be further up or down the lane, but they're the same in terms of formation. So just don't stand diagonally behind your own wave, either stand to the side horizontally or in front of it so you can avoid taking unnecessary poke that really adds up over the course of the whole laning phase. And that's it for one tip against every hunter in Smite. If you have any more of your own tips, be sure to leave those in the comments down below, and don't forget to drop a like on the video before you leave. I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.